I've been meaning to cover Persona for quite some time now, and I don't know when I'm going to get to that, but with some of the recent acclaim around Metaphor ReFantazio, that at least gives me an opportunity to visit a game from those same developers that has plenty to offer in terms of style and aesthetics. So let's tap a little bit into what Metaphor has to lend us as far as fashion. Hola, my name is X, and I like to experiment with fashion as well as talk about whatever the hell I want on social media whenever I feel like it. And in this video, I'm going to give you a super quick top 5 facts that you need to know about the Metaphor installment. Some people cop an attitude when I do this because they want to get straight to the fashion, but I'm pretty sure you have a few minutes just to go over why there is such acclaim around the game. Then we're going to move into the Metaphor style in general, and I'm actually going to expand upon this section a little bit more than usual, going into some of the clear aesthetic influences that we can see with regard to the character, clothing, and style, and even give some real-world fashion designer parallels that I think build upon particularly the 1960s aesthetic in a modern way. And then finally, business as usual, we're going to go over some of the more notable stylish characters, in my opinion, loosely ranked from least favorite to most favorite, just based on how they resonate with my personal taste. All right, now let's get into those top 5 facts that you need to know about Metaphor ReFantazio. The game was developed by Atlus, which is the same studio behind the critically acclaimed Persona, as well as Shin Megami Tensei series. And we can kind of see some similarities as far as a very rich narrative for the game overall, character-driven storytelling, as well as interesting role-playing game mechanics. Metaphor also has some similar psychological depth and fantastical themes and elements like those other titles, but obviously brings a whole new world and a whole new layer of mythology, etc. for viewers and players to get into. Speaking of fantasy, what I think sets Metaphor apart from other role-playing games that fall within the medieval kind of genre or aesthetic particularly is the fact that it has a little bit more of a modern influence on it. And we not only see that within maybe some of the fashion style and aesthetics, which we'll get to, but some of the architectural and setting influence, as well as just some of the kind of sociological or kind of tribal arrangement and politics going on. The art style has a little bit more of a raw feel to it. There's high fantasy, high ethereal visual, but just the way it's depicted feels a little bit more gritty and feels a little bit more realistic. So based on points 1 and 2, it should really come as no surprise why Metaphor won some awards at the 2024 Game Awards, specifically within the categories of narrative, art direction, and role-playing game. These accolades are not only indicative of a signature legacy and calling card that the Atlus studio is clearly establishing at this point, but also shows the innovation that this game was able to take, just to highlight that it's not too derivative of what's been done before from the studio, but bringing its own title into a new direction and kind of carving a path for even a new franchise and series within its own. Now, I have to admit, I thought that Metaphor was just going to be a basic turn-based role-playing game situation, which is what has kind of prevented me from getting into it. I'm a little exhausted by those mechanics, but it does sound like there is some real-time component to it. Then again, I haven't played Persona, so maybe that's the case there as well, which again, only further innovates as far as the genre is concerned and gives much more complex strategic rigor to the gameplay experience that can not only appeal to perhaps new gamers who are just looking for a one-off immersive experience, but also hardcore gamers who are constantly looking for a new challenge. And then along the lines of immersive, it's an expansive world that Metaphor has to offer, which is why I think that people are so compelled by the narrative and are so intrigued and drawn into the overall gameplay experience, just with the different regions, cultures, and interactions and dynamics between the different characters. But also the music is certainly a highlight. Metaphor's soundtrack was composed by Shoji Meguro, who is also known for his work on the Persona series, and I've heard so many people rave about the soundtrack and the songs and music from that series. So it's no surprise that that would bring a lot of life and energy to the Metaphor installment. What did I tell you? That was so fast. You survived those 5 quick facts. Now let's lean into the Metaphor ReFantazio style in general. In addition to a little bit of the turn-based gameplay mechanics, it's the medieval aesthetic that kind of turned me off a little bit initially to Metaphor. And when people wanted me to take a look at the title, I was looking at the characters and I'm just like, once you've seen the medieval aesthetic and style and fashion once, you've seen it a million times, especially when you're a multi-decade gamer like me. And I understand that it makes sense based off of the story and perhaps the setting, United Kingdom of Uchronia, So we have a like royal hierarchy system, different kind of region situation going on, and those often lean into typical European aesthetics. But fortunately, I did do some further research and was able to uncover some of that modern influence that makes the medieval aesthetic not feel too antiquated, overdone, and just a little bit contrived. And that influence is mid 20th century predominantly, I would say. I'm sure multi-decade, there's a little bit of Victorian, there's a little bit of other influence going on, but it's particularly the 1960s that has a strong resonance within the style and fashion that the characters have. Someone pointed this out in one of the comments on one of my other videos, and I also saw some Reddit threads kind of diving into celebration of that aesthetic. And so what are some key components of 1960s fashion? Sleek silhouettes, tailored fits, and that's not only men but women as well. Although women have a little bit more of kind of a straight shape to a bit of their dresses, but there's really distinct, bold floral patterns and just really strong, colorful patterns and color blocking in general, as well as different textures and play there. And a quick aside on a little bit of the textile context is the 1960s is when the Textile Act enforced clothing labels to have the different fabrics that go into the different fashion items, the materials that are used, and the percentages that you should be familiar with today. And synthetics were a huge innovation within the 1960s. And it really just made some of those kind of higher designer fashion items more accessible to people and just more convenient, especially youth and for household, probably women, as far as like the ease of wear, no iron, polyester, PVC spandex, like, you know what I'm talking about? And so I just find it a little interesting how today we're just so anti-synthetic for a fair reason, because it does have some toxic influences, not only on us, on our biology, but also the environment. But in the 1960s, it was a huge innovation and just made way for so many great developments within design, aesthetic, function, structure, just so many different options that expanded the fashion sphere and scope. And so when we look at some of the characters within Metaphor, especially the ones that most resonated with me, that influence is very clear, but that also extends to a bit of the final influence that I think we see, which is a modern contemporary twist. And that comes in the form of much more experimental and dramatic structures and silhouettes to the outfits. So I think very architectural. Like a lot of what the characters are wearing just feels like they're like monuments and constructions within themselves. Very great dimension and depth to them, but also exaggerated proportions to some of the components of the clothing items or garments, which we see a lot of fashion designers today experiment and play with. And just to reinforce that notion, I do want to give you just two real world fashion designer parallels, very recent, that I think not only build upon the 1960s aesthetic, but also show that clear extension into something that's a little bit more modern high fashion. And the first one is Paul Costello with his Spring Summer 2025 collection. There was an explicit intentional nod to the 1960s, and we can see that within some of the stockings, some of the headbands that the models are wearing, but we also see it within some of the structures of the actual garments. But what I like about this collection is the modern twist comes in the form of contemporary tailoring and just overall sewing and construction of the garments, as well as much more natural materials. We're talking, I'm sure, genuine, real silk, linen, and plenty of cotton. So I love that aside from the 1960s, which was obviously largely synthetic, this brings us into something that is much more sustainable and aligns with current priorities as far as fabrics and materials. And then we have Gucci's Spring 2025 collection, which I don't usually highlight Gucci because they're, in my opinion, they're so tacky a lot of times with their logos and their emblem all over everything. But this collection is so clean and really leans into some softer but bright, vibrant colors that are indicative and echo the 1960s, as well as just some more sharp, tailored, clean-cut silhouettes that I think also play around with a little bit of that aesthetic, but also bring it into a bit more of the modern, maybe with just different proportions between the different clothing items, so it doesn't feel like it's too derivative or copy paste from the 1960s. All right, that style section felt good. I was so much more conversational in this than I had prepared to. I don't ever script these, but that just felt so natural because I've really thought about this. And I think it's really interesting taking a look at maybe some of the broader influences and a bit more of the context there and just seeing how that transcends times and can really inspire and make its way into video games like Metaphor ReFantazio. So let's now get into looking at these different characters that resonated with my personal taste. You may not have your favorite character up in there, and I've loosely ranked these from least favorite to most favorite just for a little extra engagement sake. All right, starting with Julian. And in general, I think I have a little bit of a bias for the Ishkia tribe, just because of like the winged element. They just feel a little bit more elegant and ethereal and sophisticated, but I mean, most of the characters feel sophisticated here. I like this character's outfit because it definitely feels more modern, like a simple coordinated two-piece set that we would see a lot of different men wear in our everyday. So it feels very relatable, tangible, and practical in that sense. Then we have Rido, and I debated on even if I wanted to include him, but I just really think that his robe is a great example of the architectural structure that we get from some of these characters' outfits. Feels very dimensional, gives great depth, especially with that interesting kind of black shirt or just overall black outfit that he has on underneath. Simple gold lining detail pattern on the overall white robe just to really reinforce elegance, sophistication, eliteness. Next we have Will, and I kind of maybe thought about pushing him higher up, but there's just stronger statement outfits from some of the other characters. But he definitely gives 1960s strong with a little bit of the headband kind of element that he has, as well as just the structure of the jacket with the double breast button situation. And I love how it coordinates to a little bit of the cuff. It's simple, clean, I think also is reflective of how his overall kind of tribe dresses in general. But to that extent, maybe just not my favorite. But I also do love that it's a belted top. We have Leon, and I don't know, you're gonna see that I have most of the main cast towards the bottom, unfortunately, but it's a great sophisticated outfit. It's giving a little bit more Victorian. Do love the jacket and just the overall clean, sophisticated brown neutral aesthetic that he has going on. I would have maybe thought that he would be a little bit more sophisticated just based on the tribe and the class that he comes from. But overall, I think you can't go wrong with it. It's very fitted, it's very clean and nice. Then we have Iceline. Her outfit gives a little bit of medieval with the 1960s, which I think is an interesting twist. I think some of the other characters do that as well. Hers is a little bit more straightforward. Love the high-waisted pants. Love the kind of cropped jacket. It gives some great dimension. There's a little bit of like some armored element kind of thrown in, which is also a nice contrast to an overall tight, slim fit female aesthetic. I think maybe the colors just aren't really catching my eye, aren't really like moving me the most, but it's a nice sharp outfit. We have Rudolph, and I mean, I think it's really the simple black and gold. The overall structure also feels a little bit military, soldier, borderline medieval as well, but I feel like it has this a little bit more lean into contemporary high fashion as far as maybe the double belt situation and just the structure of the upper body of the jacket. And maybe it's really just the gold details, but the red scarf, I think, elevates this even further and adds just a nice pop of accessory and color to help break this out of something that could have otherwise been very flat and very one note and one dimensional. Then we have Katharina, and she's one of the few characters who are actually giving us some body confidence. Like, it's a quirky, fun outfit. It still feels, it's like it's a little bit strong, like it has some solidarity with just with a little bit of the hardware elements, but enough kind of quirk and personality in it, just with the stockings, the kind of mismatch, thrifty, personal style element to how this character is dressed. And I think that that's what resonates with me the most. There's obviously much more put together, sophisticated, stronger outfits to come, which is why she's not higher up. But I just think that she's rocking with something very unique. So really loving that for her. Then we have Zorba, really just the top that I think is so unique and interesting and stand out of what everybody else is wearing. This sheer lace detail that is giving plenty of body confidence in the front upper body is so excellent. I actually want a top just like this. Kind of have some sheer lacy tops like this anyway. And the pants are just like a nice solid contrast to that feel very solid, really root the outfit and give plenty of presence and attention to that interesting upper body top. Then we have Brigitte or Brigitte, and she has what Iseline was wearing, but just one step up. And I think the step up is with the large jacket over the shoulders, like a jacket over the shoulders. A jacket over the shoulder just gives so much more presence and dominance within a look, and just commands so much more attention. And there's even some great lining to the jacket, which is a little more low key, just a little pop of personality underneath, giving some mystery, giving some intrigue, drawing me in to wonder what else this character is about. Then we have Jin. And I just think that this is such a fun, playful outfit for something that is also very sophisticated and luxurious, even, because there's some great colorful fur detail that immediately puts this character style in a whole different category. And I think really just the purple pinkish elements in general. Like there's even a purple belt. There's some bluish kind of accessory within the necktie that coordinates with the eyes. Like it's just an overall unique outfit with just enough pattern, texture, and structure to it that truly makes it something of its own. Then we have Louis. I think it's just in his main default form, not in any sort of advanced form. Incredible. Just drama, silhouette, layer, dimension, all the key style components checked. Elite, gold, like there's everything here. It just gives so much aura, presence, all of the commanding elements that we want out of a chic, polished, dominant villain. Then there's Rella, once again part of that like angel-y tribe that I really appreciate, and just almost feels alien. And I think that that's such a unique twist to her style that makes it feel very novel and refreshing. And we also just see that within a very slim, tight, cinched silhouette of the outfit, which I think is only further complemented by exaggerated proportions, like the different sleeves. There's just enough pattern, like those line patterns, and subtle gold hardware that just immediately pushes this into something high fashion. Juani, fresh out of a 1960s magazine. Like it's giving Twiggy. Honestly, that was the first kind of fashion icon from that decade and that era that she reminded me of. Signature mod, we got the headband, we have the kind of cute little heel shoe situation, the tall stockings. Like she has all of the elements. On top of that, what makes it a little bit more modern, in my opinion, is the kind of strong statement belt or accessory elements that she has. Great innovation. Like we're bringing in some inspiration, but building upon it in an interesting way. Then we have Milo, so elegant. It's a typical kind of robe style, but I love how it opens up to give great shape and structure. And I think the incorporation of a more kind of dominant yellow color is not only complementary to the purple hair, but also just really helps this stand out and pop. And I love the lining of the robe or the jacket. Blue only further complementing some of that yellow color as well. And I love the sleeves, and I feel like the sleeves only further reinforce a bit of the kind of open shape that the jacket has as well. Next we have More, and this outfit composition and structure is very similar to Brigitte or Brigitte and Iselin. Clean black overall aesthetic. Like honestly, if you're just gonna go there and give us the whole black fantasy, and this is exactly what that does. So snatched. Honestly, want the whole thing, even a cute little hat to just further complement and accessorize. There's even just some different texture to a bit of the top that makes it feel a little less flat than it maybe could have felt otherwise, with some subtle kind of beige or gold elements thrown in, just to kind of draw us a little bit more into the upper body. But we need to talk about Glodell. Like this is such a statement. Look, this jacket is serving so absolutely hard with some additional decorative elements like a different textured lapel and a very strong statement print that just completely puts them in another category. Loving also a bit of the upper chest body confidence with some great like jewelry and accessorizing. I want this jacket unbelievably bad. Like it's just not usually one for animal print like this. Very in your face. Then a couple of honorable mentions before we get to my top pick. Alonzo, who I feel like has overall more of a Victorian oriented style, similar outfitting to some of the other characters, but just with some color and decorative element differentiation and a nice top hat to kind of give him his own unique look in his regard. And then we have Loveless, who I feel like screams Jimi Hendrix late 1960s, borderline 70s male fashion, free spirit, flower childish, like very common accessories that we would see from that era. So really love the laid back, kind of thrifty personal style. But I have to say that Basilio is the best dressed. Like, it's so effortlessly cool guy, which I think is interesting just based on how much of a strong 60s, borderline 70s style that I think that he's really giving us. Loving the scarf, loving the jacket with a little bit of fringe, like larger fringe detail. I love the statement kind of belt that he's wearing, and I love the just kind of nice chunkier boot just to really pair well with those pants. Like, it's just so absolutely perfectly styled. I mean, if a dude really wants to just go around in a statement look without having to be too bougie or too like over the top, I think that this is the way to go. All right, that's my 2 cents on the Metaphor ReFantazio game installment. Let me know what you thought about some of the style influence that went into the game, and have you played it? What do you think about it? Who's your favorite styled character? Want to hear it? But until the next video, I'll talk to you later.